So it occurred to me the other day, there's probably a lot of you sitting there going, who is this girl that's posting all this random stuff? I don't know who she is. I don't know what the hell she's been through. And yeah. So I've decided to get a little uncomfortable and give you kind of like a brief but somewhat detailed description of my story and my life in parts. So you're going to want to like and follow this so that way you can get the whole story if you care to know. So unfortunately, I am very familiar with anxiety and depression, and up until a couple years ago, I literally let my anxiety rule my world, and it was terrible. And ever since I've gotten myself in a great place, I've decided I really need to help others with it. So I mentioned the anxiety and depression stuff. And yes, that stuff's horrible, and I never want anybody to have to live that way. But the reason I'm sharing my story isn't for, oh, poor me, or anything like that. I'm actually, as weird as it's gonna sound, grateful and thankful I've been through all the stuff I've been through, because it has made me who I am today, and I have learned so much, and it's in a way been kind of a blessing. I've just decided to get very vulnerable and tell you some details of my life so you're not just like, oh, this girl's living her best life. It's easy for her to preach some of this stuff and say the things she says, but she's never been through anything. How the hell can she even talk about it? And I'm not saying that I've been through it all and, whatever, but we all have a story, and I just want to be vulnerable and share my. So growing up, my poor mom also dealt with anxiety and depression, and I think she used alcohol as a way of coping with it, which was hard on us, me and my brother, because it put a lot of responsibilities on me to take care of both of us. And there were times where she would get really nasty and violent towards me for no reason, which was really frustrating, and I didn't understand what I had done wrong. So yeah, her and I always had a rough relationship, and then I was always super close with my dad. He was like my best friend. I always did everything with my dad and my brother, which put more strain on us. So I feel like there was always like tension between us, and we just didn't have the best relationship growing up. And then my relationships throughout my life, I've had my fair share of the physical and mental abuse, and I think it all stems back from the way I grew up. When it came to those bad relationships, I was like, I've always had a great dad that was a great example. Why the hell am I keep putting myself through these types of relationships? And then come find later down the road that you find out, growing up the way I did with my mom, I didn't think to look into that side, that does put you in these situations that you shouldn't be. So I definitely took a lot of abuse from people that I definitely shouldn't have. And it was a lot because I didn't have good self-esteem myself, so they only made it worse. I grew up hating myself because of my anxiety and my depression. I could just look in the mirror and just start crying, and I was my own worst enemy in so many different ways, but it was just so sad. Like it just pains me knowing that I put myself through that stuff. Like I put myself through it, like nobody else did. I mean, people contributed to, those insecurities, but I was the one putting myself through hell. So this is where the story starts getting a little ugly. I, unfortunately, while I was living my best life, became friends with a guy that, the perfect charm and whatever, and thought, okay, he's a cool friend, whatever. Well, I didn't realize once, I tried dating other people and wouldn't date him, how crazy he would get. So he literally knew everything on my phone. He always knew my locations. He knew what my text messages said. He would always be showing up wherever I was. If I went on a date, he showed up there at these people's houses or wherever the hell I was. And it was so incredibly scary. And I've dealt with crazy exes and whatever, but I never dealt with somebody that would just never ever leave me alone. And this is why you always trust your gut, because he was fun to party with when I wanted to just be single and have a good time and everything, but my gut. And this is one of those things that took me a very long time for me to talk about because it was so uncomfortable. But not only did he just put me through hell and would never go away. But one night I come home alone, think I'm sleeping safe in my bed, and I go through rape with this person. It took me a while to admit to myself that I was a victim of the situation, and I just never thought that it would ever go down, let alone in that way, safe at home in my bed alone. But when I finally came to terms with things, that's when I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to take some sort of action to remove this person from my life, because it is just unbelievably scary at this point, and I am afraid of what might come next. So the torture continued, and I finally went to my parents and was like bawling my eyes out, and I was like, look, I don't ask for anything, but I don't know what to do. He keeps showing up at the house, like all this stuff. I didn't go into all the dirty details because I just didn't want to share it with them at that time. And my dad's like, all right, let's call the cops, let's see what we can do. My mom's sitting there going, we need to get the bar. So that really hurt me, especially knowing like all the stuff that I've been going through, that she didn't know everything. But still, my dad took me to the courthouse. I filed for a restraining order, and unfortunately our system is so broken that I had to show up for like 4 weeks to court every single day, every single week, while he didn't have to show up until he finally did, and they put the restraining order through. So the order goes through on a Tuesday, and that Saturday I get the world-ending news that my dad passed away. Like, I just didn't know. I was beside myself. It was always my biggest fear to lose that one person that I could always call if I ever needed anything. He just was, you have that person, and it was just so good to have that person. And because it was sudden and the timing, I literally sat there and was like, great, did this psycho have something to do with his death? Like, I literally started blaming myself, which is horrible. I shouldn't have done that, and I kept it to myself for so long and carried that guilt with me, thinking that this could have been my fault. Like he knew how to get to me. He even called my dad somehow when he was taking me to get the order. So after the world seemed to end, my mom had the audacity to tell me that she had it worse, and I still was there for her. I tried my best helping her and knew that this was going to be hard on her, even though she acted like she hated him all the time and treated him like crap. So I know he's in a better place, which makes me happy. And she used to take out all her anger and aggression out on either him or me. So without him around, things got very, very bad. And I don't feel like I need to go into all those details because I'll be here freaking all day. Let's just say she tried her best to make my life a living hell. And because I wouldn't react, I think it just made it worse. And she just kept doing like the unthinkable that you could do to someone, let alone your own daughter, going through a very rough time in their life. And so all these horrible events triggered very bad health for me. I had pretty much a 4-year UTI, which is god awful, and a bunch of other health issues, and of course the horrible anxiety that ruled my life. And the thing that nobody talks about enough is when you try to get on medicine for this stuff, sometimes it makes you 10 times worse, and you sink further into a hole with your depression, and you become super suicidal. And I was there. I don't like to talk about it, but yeah, I tried. And I even had an episode as a teenager, and I thought I'm just gonna end it. And my dad came out of nowhere in the middle of the night and just was like, hey, I love you, right? And I used to say I owed it to him. I could go on for days with all the dirty details of things in my life, but I'm not gonna bore you all with that. I'm just here to share my story because I want you to know it's normal, unfortunately, to go through all these tragedies. Hell, I think we've all survived 2020 with some bumps and bruises. I know it was very hard for me to go 2 months or more with no work, and when you're already struggling, that doesn't help. But I was just literally doing whatever just to survive, to get through. I was on autopilot. I wasn't necessarily dealing with some of this stuff. I was just trying to keep going because nobody was going to be there to catch me or take care of me. I just needed to function. But most importantly, I want you guys to know it's possible to come out amazing on the other side. I've grown so much, I am so much stronger, and I have a huge